Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heavily Contested Hoops podcast. My name is Peyton Mitchell, and today we're going to get a little controversial here with these takes that I'm about to have. And we're also going to talk about the games that were played during round one of day two of the March Madness tournament. So let's go ahead and get started off hot, just like the tournament got started off hot this morning with number 7 Kentucky playing number 10 Santa Clara, and that was an overtime thriller. I'm just going to have to go ahead and say this was beautiful. OTEGA away. You are him. I fell in love with OTEGA away back in last year around this time in the SEC tournament when he had that buzzer beater against them in it was the SEC tournament game. And that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the guy. OTEGA away, baby. That is him. He is that guy. He's clutch. There's multiple clutch shots that he's hit in his life. And today just added to another one. There was an interview that he had the other week or the other month that he said, I feel like the best one's yet to come. Otega, that one today might have been the best one. Especially when you cap off, you had 35 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. There was nobody stopping you. There was nobody stopping that ball from going in. It's almost like there's a magnet on the rims in March when it comes down to shots like that. And that is what we live for when it comes down to the final seconds of any March Madness tournament game. But I want to give a shout out to the teachers in Kentucky that had the game on for their students in about probably second period. I remember back in the day, that was my favorite time of the year watching this in school, just like many of the other people. So shout out the teachers because that is a memory that students will have for the rest of their life for their second period class watching Otega Owe hit that 3-4 almost half court shot to send it to overtime and ultimately win. And with 2 seconds left, Santa Clara had a 97% chance to win. They were up 3. And that leads me into Josh Rothstein's 3 rules that you have to live by. 1, you never acknowledge The Godfather Part 3. I haven't even watched the first Godfather, so I don't even know how I'm going to acknowledge the third one. I didn't even know there were 3. And second, never waste calories on pizza outside of the Eastern time zone. That is 100% true. New York pizza is better than any pizza in the world, and don't waste your time having any other type of pizza. And the third one is what Santa Clara should have done. Always foul up 3 late. Always. That needs to be the case. You always have to foul when you're up 3. 2 free throws, you get the ball back with 1 second, 2 seconds maybe, and you're the ones moving on instead of Otega Owe sending it to overtime, and you're ultimately not going to knock down the powerhouse of Kentucky in overtime. Mid-majors have to get the job done in regulation. Now let's talk about the controversy before they were even able to even think about fouling when they were up 3. Santa Clara's head coach, Herb Sendek, tried to call a timeout. There were 2 officials looking at him in the picture. In the thing, he was running up the court, calling timeout. He was saying timeout, timeout, timeout. It was not granted, which led to one of the greatest moments in this tournament's history and probably one of the best moments in this tournament for Otega Owe's half-court buzzer beater banked in shot. So we're not going to complain because we got a moment from that, but you got to feel for Santa Clara fans because that win was right there. Right after the highlight of Santa Clara's game was Allen Graves' clutch shot for 3 to put them up 3 with 3 seconds left. He had 17 points and was 6 for 6 from the 3-point line. And it was just an absolute beauty by Graves tonight. Hate to see it end like that in overtime after you hit an amazing clutch shot. You were just one up right after that by Otega Owe. Now, let's move on to another game that I saw with number 8 Utah State and number 9 Villanova. Talk about basketball, and it's a game of runs. And that's exactly what this game was back and forth. Except for 2 parts of this game. Utah State outscored Villanova 20-6 in the paint in the first half. I'm sure you've all seen the clip of Villanova's coach saying he's firing his staff. Yeah, that 20-6 being outscored in the paint in the first half, that is atrocious. That is never going to win a ball game. The fact that this game was close down the stretch should have never happened. it doesn't make sense how you are outscored 20-6 and you're down by 2 at halftime. You're outscored 20-6 in the paint and you're only down by 2 at halftime. Oh my goodness. But it did not get better for them in the second half. They had Utah State ended up having 50 points in the paint to Villanova's 22. There's a reason Utah State went on another run at the end of the game, because they could not be stopped inside the paint. There were only five shots that they took from inside the three-point line that weren't in the paint, and they made 3 of those 5. And then to add on top of everything they did in the paint to help show that they could not stop them in the paint, Utah State shot 36 foul shots. Villanova couldn't stop them at all. There's no reason that game should have ever been close. They were also out-rebounded by 10 total. They just could not get anything stopped in the paint. It was just a complete and utter domination by Utah State's game plan, and Villanova was not ready for that. They, as the coach said, he's got to find a new coaching staff, which I don't agree with that. Obviously, he probably should not say that in his interview, but yeah, there was not they did not do their job on that one. That one was pretty bad, with 50 points in the paint to Villanova's 22 in the game. Only 5 shots from inside the arc were not in the paint. That is insane, especially then at that point, you're just fouling everything because they're shooting 36 free throws. That was just domination down low, and they were just banging. And they were just the better team. They stuck to their game plan, and Villanova had no idea what the game plan was. So now I want to move on to a game right here that, yes, it's a blowout. It ended up being a blowout, but it really wasn't a blowout for the whole game. This was an upset that a lot of people might have thought were going to happen as events transpired down through the week. But number 4 Alabama beat number 13 Hofstra 90-70. But it took some time for Alabama to get going and get used to an Aiden Holloway-less squad. They were only up 2 at the break. That's expected when you're playing a Hofstra team that is coming to win. They had beat powerhouses, not as in the season, but powerhouse schools names in Pitt and Syracuse in the same week. So that gives them hope coming into a game in a tournament like this, especially when they just won the CAA, which is a very, very good mid-major conference. And you add into the fact that Aiden Holloway, the team's second leading scorer, is not there. It took some time for Alabama to figure out. And that's ended what happened and why that was a 2-point lead at the break. But Hofstra ended up outshooting them, which is an Alabama team that is one of the fastest paced offenses in the country. And it's always been that. We saw that they scored 90 points again. They continue to do that day in and day out, especially when they have a guy like LeBaron Philon Jr., who had 29 today. But it's crazy that they were outshot and still put up 90 points to Hofstra's 70 when they both averaged exactly what they averaged during the season. And it didn't feel like that. LeBaron Philon Jr., he was absolutely on a heater, and it probably hurt Hofstra that Cruz Davis, the CAA Player of the Year, was held to only 14 points. But now let's talk about Alabama's next matchup coming up with Texas Tech, and how them not having Aiden Holloway, in my opinion, is going to be a huge, huge loss for them when they play a team like Texas Tech. Now, you can come at me right now and say, they don't have JT Toppin at Texas Tech. Well, guess what? Texas Tech played in the best conference in basketball this season and did fine down the stretch until they lost their guard Christian Anderson in the Big 12 tournament, which ultimately ended up hurting them due to that glass court. So on that case, I think Aiden Holloway not being there for a game like a 4-5 matchup against Texas Tech is going to hurt them in the long run. That's just how it is. So after we see that, they still scored 90 points today. But once you play a team that's actually would have been a very, very high favorite to win the championship, with JT Toppin, who was the best transfer in this portal class until he tore his ACL and was out the rest of the year. I think that Alabama's got a little bit less of a chance now than what they would have had with Aiden Holloway, as I would have had them moving on and making a run in this tournament had the events that transpired earlier in the week not happen. So therefore, I'm going to take Texas Tech in this next game, especially since they have Christian Anderson back. And we'll just see what happens because it's March and we got to expect the unexpected. But my pick for that game is going to be number 5, Texas Tech, when they play. So now let's talk about this number 3 Virginia squad who came back from the dead and won their first tourney game since the 2019 championship, which they won over Texas Tech. They beat number 14 Wright State today, but it didn't look like it was going to happen for a while in that game. Now, for context, Virginia has been to the tournament 3 times since their 2019 tournament win or championship win. They lost in the first round to Ohio in 2021, which was an upset that everyone picked because that was a high one. And then they lost, or 2020, they didn't have a tournament, so they didn't have a win there. Then 2022, they did not make the tournament. In 2023, they had a loss to Furman in the first round that we all knew, where Kihei Clark threw it over his back. Furman came down and hit that incredible 3 for a great game where everyone lost it in the booth. That was a great game, especially for me when I talk about Kentucky winning a game at the buzzer and watching it in school. Watching Furman, who beat Virginia in a very big southern town for basketball in North Carolina, right down the road from Furman. That was a crazy game to watch in school, and that's definitely a memory. I remember 4th period class, stayed a little bit after the bell just to see that buzzer beater. That one was crazy. And then in 2024, they had a butt whooping from their first 4 loss against Colorado State. That put the nail in the coffin for them next year. And the fact that Ryan Odom took them after their worst year in a long time, from that first 4 loss to their next year to then this year. Hey, Ryan Odom, hats off to you. You have done a great job over there in Charlottesville. So, as I said, it didn't look great for a while until this man, Jakari White, who averages 8.8 points per game, he dropped 26 today on 10 of 12 shooting, and he rained home 6 threes. That was beautiful. He is single-handedly the reason they won this game because without him, nobody was there to make that happen. So Jakari White, way to help Virginia get back in the spotlight and pull off their first win since their 2019 championship run. After even before that in 2018, they lost to UMBC without DeAndre Hunter. And as we see, teams that don't have their players tend to not play good, and we see higher seeds win these games, even though this next one I'm going to talk about was an 8-9 matchup with Clemson, number 8, and number 9, Iowa. Iowa won 67-61, and it felt like this was a 5 to 6 point game the whole way. The whole way it felt like it was a 5 to 6 point lead for Iowa, and there was nothing Clemson could do to get over that hump. It got to a point to where Clemson was playing hack-a-shack with Cam Mawayu. He was 1 for 4 from the free throw line, and they were playing hack-a-shack. There was a second he got fouled, and he literally was like just looked at the bench because he's like, they're fouling me because I'm not going to make these free throws. He missed the first 3, and that allowed Clemson to get it close to 5. But it just they never got it to that, and that was strictly because Iowa's offensive rebounds were great. Once Clemson was playing great defense, and they forced a shot at the end of the shot clock, but they never got the offensive rebound. That offensive rebound, if they would have got those offensive rebounds when it was a 5-point game, to have the chance to make it a 1-possession game with a 2 or a 3, it was right there in their hands. They just never got the offensive rebound. And the reason I can say that is because Iowa out-rebounded Clemson 40-27 in this game. Clemson never had a chance. And the reason for that was the absence of Carter Welling, who tore his ACL earlier in the year, and he averaged 10 points a game. That's 10 points you don't have right there. You lost by 6. That's 10 points you are going to get without losing any contribution from anybody else. And that's 6 more rebounds that you're going to get to take away from them. And that even out the rebounding. So you're able to cut that lead down and maybe even take the lead if he was not there. But we can't just say it's because of injuries, because injuries happen. So Bennett Stritz, Bennett Stritz was playing a game that was not a Bennett Stritz game. It was not his best game that he's played in his career. But you would have never known that by him if you just looked at the box score and saw he had 16 points and was their leading scorer. But he was 4 for 17 from the field and 3 for 10 from 3. He had 3 really big threes. It took him a minute to get going from behind the arc to hit those threes. But he was doing the little things, making assists, getting rebounds and stuff like that, that really took away from the fact that he was having such a poor night shooting. So Bennett Stritz, great job from Iowa. You really got that job done. And now you're moving on to the next round. So as I continue this trend, I'm talking about a lot of ACC schools because they got 8 teams and they're playing really great games. Now, I talked about Virginia before this Clemson team. Let's talk about another team in the ACC that turned it around this year. Number 7 Miami versus number 10 Missouri. They won 80-66. This was a very, very impressive game to see. It was very tight back and forth. Missouri was down 54-53 with about 8 minutes to go. And they go on Miami was down 54-53. And they went on a huge 11-0 run to make this game pretty much out of hand for this one. And Miami was impressive here. Malik Reneau, 24 points, 7 for 16 from the field, and 2 for 4 from 3. And they were some really, really big three-pointers. But the thing I liked the most was the 8 for 11 from the free throw line. We've seen multiple teams today not shoot well at all from the free throw line, and that is why they have lost games. So Malik Reneau, 24 points, 8 for 11 from the free throw line. That was a huge reason as to why they went on this 11-0 run and continued to pull away after it was a tight back and forth battle the whole way. Trey Donaldson, also, he was humongous for them. He had 17 points, 5 for 7 from the three-point line with 8 rebounds and 6 assists. This is a guy that was doing it all the little things for them. It was a quiet 17 other than his 5 threes. It's 5 threes for 15 of them. And they were big shots every single time. Him and Malik had multiple three-pointers that helped push that run to an 11-0 run, and they never looked back from that when it was 65-53 on that 11-0 run. Or no, 64-54 on that 11-0 run that helped them, and they never looked back from that, ended up winning by 12, knocking down their free throws at the end. But the biggest part is Miami's defense. They held Mizzou to 35% shooting from the field and 36% from 3. Anytime you hold a team shooting like that, you're going to win any game possible. There's no doubt about it. I will put money on it. If you hold a team to shoot 35% from the field and 36% from 3, you're not losing the game at all. And here's why. Missouri was 3 for 11. No. Miami was 3 for 11 to start with their free throws. Let me get this right. Let me backtrack back a little bit to Miami real quick. They were 3 for 11 from the free throw line to start this game. And I talked about Malik Reneau, 8 for 11. On that run, that's when they were 10 for 18 after they started. They were 7 for 8 after that run, to where they went for 3 for 11 and ended up being 10 for 18 at that time, hit 7 free throws down that run, and a lot of that was because of Malik Reneau. But the defense, Mizzou shot the exact same amount of made the exact same amount of three-pointers as they did 2-point shots. They only made 20 shots total in that game, 10 from the field from the floor, 10 from three-point land. And just like that, Miami is going to win every single game that they hold a team to shooting 35% from the field. So let's get back on track with another 7-10 game. Number 7 UCLA versus number 10 UCF. This was a game that I felt UCLA was in control of this game all the way from the opening tip until the end of the game. This was not close until it was close. And I was sitting there thinking, there's no way they are about to lose this game. How are you actually about to choke a game that you've been fully in control with since the opening tip? They, with 10 seconds left, it was a 3-point game. When they were up by 9 with 25 seconds before that, 35 seconds ago, they were up by 9. It was cut to 3 with 10 seconds left. I saw a stat that it took 34 minutes to play 3 minutes of game time. The amount of free throws that UCLA missed down that stretch was just horrendous, and it added to the fact with the turnovers that they had, allowed UCF to get back into this game on some clutch shots by Jordan Burks. So I'm going to highlight Jordan Burks since I just mentioned him real quick. He had 22 points on 6 for 11 from 3, and the threes he hit were the reason why UCLA about choked this game away. Now, because of that, those threes they hit put them back in the game to end up losing by 4. Here's where I just talked about free throws in the Mizzou game and the Miami game. UCF shot 5 for 16 from the free throw line. If you just make 4 of those and you shoot 9 for 16, which is 50-something percent. My math is not going to be good on that right now. Just 4 more, that's a tie game. We're going to overtime. UCLA missed free throws to let you get back into the game, but you didn't make any of your free throws at the beginning. So why are we even going to go to the free throw line rest? Like, let's just stop calling fouls if they're not going to make anything. But other than that, UCF really controlled the offensive glass with 25 boards. And just with their free throws at the line, that is the reason they still had those and got fouled, but missed the free throws. So you did what you needed to do. You just didn't convert on the free ones. So UCLA, nothing really stood out from them. They were all good. Eric Daly Jr. did have 20-plus points, so that was a big night from him. But it was just in control for UCLA the whole game, and UCF played it right into it. UCLA tried to give it away, like I said, but other than that, nothing really came of it. So I know I highlighted the mid-majors yesterday. You saw it on the TikTok and the YouTube shorts. Just because number 11 Miami, Ohio lost to number 6 Tennessee, and I want to highlight they're number 6, but this is not a number 6 Tennessee team. Tennessee is by far a top 15 team in the country when they are healthy. And Nate Ament was not playing great to begin this year. It looked like it was a highway robbery by this guy to absolutely fleece Tennessee out of that money. And they lost to a Syracuse team that was horrendous after they beat them, to where you were thinking, oh my gosh, is Tennessee like actually not going to be good this year? After they had just beat Houston. So it didn't make sense in that stretch. That stretch over Thanksgiving to me was it made no sense to me at all. Like, if you were to tell me that stretch over is exactly what's going to transpire for seeding now, I wouldn't have expected that. Tennessee did not play great, but this is not a team that should be a 6 seed in any tournament. I mean, the committee did not get seeds right when we're talking about the seeds. St. John's won the Big East regular season and title in the tournament, and they're a 5 seed. Tennessee is a great team, so you cannot hold the fact that Tennessee won by 22 against Miami, Ohio against them. And here's why. Because in a game where Miami, Ohio is going to choose to live and die by the 3, that's a mid-major. They have to do what they do. Like Siena lived and died with their 5 players, Miami, Ohio chose to live and die with the 3 ball. They lived against SMU. They died to Tennessee. That's exactly what happened. There was only one guy on Miami, Ohio that was in double digits tonight, and that was Peter Suter, the MAC player of the year, who had 27. And then on the Tennessee side, Jacoby Gillespie had an amazing game with 29 points and 9 assists. Other than that, if you're going to live and die by the 3 in March, when you're going to die, you're going to die. Just like USF did, just like Miami did and didn't in the span of 3 days. So if you want to shoot a high volume amount of threes, you're going to have to expect to lose games like this in March when you absolutely go ice cold. But we can't take the fact that they went ice cold against a really, really good Tennessee team into the fact that we can start talking that they should have never been here. They proved that they can be here by that win against SMU. And I'll talk a little bit later about SMU and how we're going to have some beef now going in the next year. But Miami had a great season. 32-2 is something to 100% be proud of. And you can't take that away from them. That is a team that played day in and day out and found ways to win. And it's not easy going 32-2. There should never be speculation as whether they should or should not make the tournament. But if you're going to live and die by the 3 in March, you're going to have to expect to die and have a very fast death. Now let's move to the late game tonight, which, in my opinion, why is this the late game? This should never be the late game. Number 2 UConn versus Furman tipped off at 10:30 in Philly on the East Coast. They are playing at 10:30 on the East Coast when Arizona played Long Island at 10:35 Pacific time on the West Coast AM. AM on the West Coast to 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast for these. Why are these games not flipped? These games should 100% be flipped, or something on the East Coast should move up a time frame, and stuff on the West Coast should move back a few time frames, and watch the West Coast games late, just like any other time you would on any other given Saturday or Friday. Anytime you would watch a West Coast game later and an East Coast game before that. A 10:30 tip is just atrocious. And we saw that. We saw that with the way UConn played, and it played into Furman's hands for this. Because of this, Furman made this a ball game. It was an 82-71 final, but that does not tell the whole story. Furman had Alex Wilkins and Tom House, who both had 21 points and knocked down 4 threes. Both of these guys will not be at Furman next year. It is safe to say that both of these guys are going to get paid at a bigger school next year. And Alex Wilkins is just a freshman. So the fact that he had 21 on the big stage is very, very impressive. Even though coming out of the break, UConn found the way to shut him down and really made this game go into Tom House's hands, and he did not look back. And the reason this really got out to an 11-point win for UConn was my man, Terrace Reed Jr. 31 points and 27 rebounds. He had almost as many rebounds as points. This is impressive on any level. I know the Boozer twin, he had it in an exhibition game against Tennessee where he had 20 points and 20 rebounds. But to have 31 points and 27 rebounds in an NCAA tournament game at 10:30 at night, he might have been the only person on the court awake. Everyone else must have been sleepwalking. But it really showed you as to where UConn was 100% the better team than Furman, because they ended up out-rebounding Furman 44-23 on the glass. And that's just why that lead grew to 11 at the end of the game. There was nothing they could do. UConn missed like 4 shots in a row, and UConn grabbed every single offensive rebound. Furman ran out of gas and just was not the bigger team, and that's really why UConn was able to run away with this game. So now let's go on a rant about the ACC. The ACC, in my opinion, is the greatest basketball conference in the history of college basketball. 100%. Now, the ACC had a down year last year, and I was hyped this year from the beginning of it, and I was like, this is the rebirth of the ACC after they only had 4 teams going to the tournament. And boy, it was looking like it was going to happen. It was looking very good at the beginning of the year. And then the wheels fell off at the end. These top teams were playing like they were supposed to be there. They were playing like they were supposed to be there until they started losing games to the bottom half of the conference late in March when you don't need to be doing that. So now I'm going to go ahead and highlight every single ACC team and give you the exact reason of whether they looked bad or whether they looked good. And it's a whole lot of bad. Starting off with NC State. Oh my gosh. This is the problem with NC State. They had all that hype for absolutely nothing. I could have told you from the beginning of the year, the thing that is going to bite them in the butt is the fact that they don't have a center. And they did not have a center. Ben Allen Lubin is not a center. Will Wade, did you ask Hubert Davis if he was a good center? Because no, he was not. We see that. So now, all that hype, Will Wade was talking all that junk, and you don't even have a team to compete. You thought you were backing Darian Williams all year. He was terrible this year. Say that. He was awful. Preseason ACC Player of the Year, he was nowhere to be found all year. Just that all that hype was there for nothing. The one thing they did have good was Quadir Copeland, and that was a fun guy to watch day in and day out. Now, my biggest problem moving to my next team here, SMU. What? Like, I don't even know how I'm going to phrase this because this is going to be a message. This is a message to the committee. We are going to have to fill out injury reports to start the year or to start before the committee because there's no reason this SMU team should have been in the tournament. A BJ Edwards-less SMU squad is terrible. Take into the fact that they can't play on the road, this team is never going to be good. So the fact that they got into this tournament after losing games down the stretch on the road, we know they weren't going to play good on the road. They're going to have to make the committee make a decision to submit a final injury report before the first bracket comes out. And for their first game, that injury report is going to have to hold true. If it's playing in the first four, especially for these bubble teams like that, this is going to help us differentiate these teams that should get in or should not get in. Because I would much have rather watched an Oklahoma squad over this BJ Edwards-less SMU squad. So now let's move on to this Duke squad. That is my still favorite to win it, but I'm not comfortable. It seemed like they were comfortable yesterday and thought this was going to be a cakewalk. But this is March. It says March Madness on the court in the center. No game is going to be easy in March. You need to get it together and figure it out. And I got faith in John Shire that he is going to get them right for this game against TCU tomorrow, and it's going to look completely different than what we saw against Siena. And now, I touched on this one yesterday. UNC, I think it's a coaching problem. It's over. They had the one good year and the one good run in Hubert Davis's first year. Other than that, the injury hurt, but you started shot chucking threes at the worst time of the tournament when you were up 19. You should never blow a 19-point lead in any game like that in the second half. And UNC's been known to blow these leads for multiple times, day in and day out, game after game. Clemson, I really think Clemson would have won today's tournament if it was not for the Carter Welling injury. And that has really ended up what hurt them down the stretch. It was just a struggle, unlucky end to a good season for the Clemson Tigers. But Carter Welling is the reason that they did not get the job done today and looked like they limped into the finish line. Virginia, there's not much to say bad about you today, especially since this is your first time back in the tournament after a year hiatus and an absolute blowout. The year before that, you started slow, but you ended up figuring it out, and you got a big day from my man Jakari White. Jakari White stepped up for them today and really had it going from the three-point line. Louisville, you got to take care of the ball tomorrow against Michigan State. After that, if you don't take care of the ball, it's going to be a whole lot uglier than what the final minutes of that USF game looked like. 22 turnovers is unacceptable. You play slow. You don't put up shots. This was a team that was ranked in the near the top 10 at the beginning of the year. This was a bad fall off. They had everybody just like NC State. The hype was there. I just don't see it with Louisville. And Michael Brown Jr. might be half of the problem. You don't have your best player, but you got to take care of the basketball. It's the thing that scores the points. It's the thing that does the damage. You got to hold on to it and stop turning the ball over, especially if you're going to turn the ball over against a mid-major USF squad. What are you going to do against a solid Michigan State team from the Big Ten? And I'm going to stop complaining about the ACC because Miami looked solid tonight. Despite their early free throw struggles early, Jay Lucas had his squad ready to go, and they figured it out, knocked the free throws down for that run, and never looked back after that. So hats off to Miami. Way to make it proud and end the night and the first 2 days of the tournament strong for the ACC. Now, the ACC still has 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 8 teams in it, and we see that they might have 2 teams move on, whether Virginia beats Tennessee or Miami beats, who is Miami playing? They are playing, let me make sure of this real quick. Miami is playing, I got to refresh the screen real quick. Miami's playing Purdue. That's a very winnable game out of the Big Ten champions. We know Purdue loves to choke. So anything can happen when Miami goes to that. So we could easily see 4 teams in the Sweet 16 if Louisville figures out how to beat Louisville finds out to be a Big Ten Michigan State squad. Miami finds out to be a Big Ten Purdue squad. Duke has to be more physical against TCU. And Virginia has to beat Tennessee. Oh, no, do we only have – no, we have 4. Exactly. Miami has to beat Purdue. Louisville has to beat Michigan State. Virginia has to beat Tennessee. And Duke has to beat TCU. I feel like Duke gets through, and I feel like if you're going to win one, it's going to be Louisville's going to pull off an upset within a Virginia upset, and anything can happen in that Miami game if Malik Reneau and Trey Donaldson gets – Yo, what's good? Hey, come here. Oh, it's all right, now let's move to my matchups to watch. And I'm starting this one off hot with number 12, High Point versus Arkansas. Even though Arkansas is a minus 11.5 point favorite, and I have Arkansas, or actually it's number 4. It's number 4 Arkansas moving on into my Final Four. So I'm taking right at Arkansas. But High Point, that's a team, if they get hot from 3, like they're going to live and die from the 3 with Chase Johnson, just like Miami is going to live and die from the 3. If they die from the 3 today, Arkansas is 100% going to cover this, and it's going to be a timely death for the High Point Panthers. Moving to the 4-5 matchup, this one's going to be a close one. This one could go either way. I got number 5 Vanderbilt covering the 1.5 point spread against number 4 Nebraska, even though Nebraska was absolutely hot with Price Stanford in their game against Troy. I see Vanderbilt being the better team out of the SEC. They're hotter coming off the SEC runner-up squad and beating Florida, who they would have to beat again if they win this game and Florida gets past whoever they're playing or whoever they play next in Iowa. Now, the third game to watch, this is the one I think I have to. This will segment right into my bracket talk. I have a Survivor League. I'm right now thinking I'm going to go with number 3 Gonzaga to get the 6.5 point favorite, or they are the 6.5 point favorite. I think they're going to end Texas's first 4 journey into their upset win over BYU. So I'm taking Gonzaga with Graham EK. Braden Huff less Gonzaga team. So I'm still going to take Gonzaga because Graham EK is going to be too much for the Texas squad tomorrow. Now, talking about my bracket, I'm going to give you a group update. I'm in first place after a terrible day yesterday where I said I was in dead last. After the 32 games that we saw the last 2 days, I only had 5 total picks wrong. The biggest one that hurts is High Point because I knew that one could 100% happen. But after that, I see the same thing. Nothing changes. Nothing changes with what I'm thinking. I still got Duke. I still want them to lock in because this TCU game is not going to be easy. It's going to be a physical game. Um, and they were not physical at all with Siena. So my full thoughts on how these first two games of the tournament went. I loved it. I thought it was great. The scores are not fully indicative of what actually happened in those games. But if you were looking for upsets, the amount of upsets were not there for you. And that is what makes March great. But you got an OTEGA OWEH buzzer beater. You got a High Point upset. You got a Texas upset over BYU. You got a VCU upset over North Carolina. And you got a 40-point St. Louis win over an SEC squad, Georgia. So other than that, the tournament has had everything. It's just not been the final scores that tell the whole story of this tournament. But that does it for this episode of the Heavily Contested Hoops podcast. I'm Peyton Mitchell. Tune in on YouTube and Spotify. We're still trying to get Apple Podcasts figured out, even though I really haven't looked at it. Other than that, tune in tomorrow for another episode of day 3 of the tournament.